back in time a little bit here. I'm going to take you back to November 24th, 1859. Well, so if we can get this to work. It's the little... Oh, can you put that in? Thank you. Catherine, could you go to the next slide? Sorry, there we go. All right, excellent. So this is the date that Darwin published The Origin of Species. That's our first theory of evolution that came out. Now I want you to recall, though, what it's like to be from 1859. This is really not that long ago, less than 200 years. This is before the Civil War, before most of known science. There are horse-drawn carriages. There are oil lamps because electricity hasn't really been made widely known. There's a printing press, but most people can't really afford books yet. And science as we know it is kind of in its infant stages. We know about gravity. We know that the Earth is round by now, that it revolves around the sun and some planets are out there. But there's no knowledge of evolution or the Big Bang. And your whole life, all you know is one story about the origins of life on Earth. Just this one story. Some of you may recall this. It goes like this. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. It's beautiful poetry. But now you read this book, The Origin of Species, or maybe you go to a lecture, more likely, and you're told that you are, in fact, actually, descendants of monkeys. How might you feel? Because that's one of the things that was really hard. Religion's explanation comes from a sense of meaning. Genesis is poetry. It's taking something that seems unexplainable and finding a way to create awe and this reverence of something that is so magnificent, this creation. But you come from monkeys really doesn't cut it for creating awe and reverence. Here we have what I think is the problem why many people still struggle even with the idea of evolution. You struggle with incorporating science and religion together. Science, if we only see numbers and chemicals, if we take out, say, one moment in time and say, hey, you're a descendant of monkeys, it can seem cold and devoid of meaning. But we can't ignore science, right? So you could say, well, tough, just deal with it. But some people then sort of went to something called intelligent design, right? To explain science from a religious point of view. And the first person actually to do this was an Anglican priest named William Paley. And he created this metaphor that he calls the clockmaker. And the idea was that if you found a pocket watch in the middle of a field someplace, you would assume that somewhere there is a clockmaker. So if you see precision and order in the world, there must be then someone who created it. That's how intelligent design sort of goes. And to this day, it still holds on to that clockmaker metaphor, seeing the complexity of the world as sort of mind-boggling, far more for us to grasp. As a matter of fact, I remember reading one book on intelligent design, and it spoke about the eye in particular. It said the eye is so incredibly complex that there's no way that evolution could really explain the eye. It must come from someplace else. Well, that's up for you to decide whether or not you want to go that way or not. But science also, pure science, also uses the clockmaker metaphor. Because as scientists, we can reduce the clock, right, to all of its parts, and therefore understand how it works. A clock, in a sense, is pure science at work. But some might see this really as too reductionist. Now, reductionism is a methodology, kind of a rationalism, that reduces something from its component parts, but not looking at the whole of what it does. So, for example, a clock is made up of various parts that we can understand how it's put together, but its purpose which is greater than its parts, is to tell time and to hopefully keep us on time, in fact. To be reductionist is to take the meaning out of what that is. You've heard the term, or that phrase, we are greater than the sum of our parts, and it comes in response to that reductionist methodology. I think that sometimes we are reductionist in science, like saying we evolved from monkeys, which of course is true, but it doesn't tell the whole story, and it doesn't have anything to say about our purpose or the meaning of our lives. So here we have two sort of opposing ideas, right, about the origin of Earth. We got science and mythical poetry. We've got something that maybe takes away some meaning, but the other one asks you to leave your brain at the door. So what do you do about all this? But what if we could combine the two? What if there's a way of honoring science, not so much in a reductionist way, but add meaning to who we are? Well, I'm going to introduce you to these two lovely people here, Michael Dowd and Connie Barlow. Michael was a former evangelical minister who preached against Darwin and evolution for a good part of his life. For the exact reasons that I just described, he found science too cold and uninspiring. And quite frankly, the thought of evolving from monkeys seemed silly to him. But he had one of those transformative moments, like the nun in our story. And for him it happened when he heard Brian Swimme speak. That guy from our reading. He spoke at a conference, and I realized what his objection to evolution was, that it wasn't the science, but the way the story is told. That there was no meaning for him behind it. And he became a passionate evolutionist. And he then met Connie Barlow here, who happens to be a Unitarian Universalist, a humanist. She was also passionate about evolution, and together they realized that we need a new story, a new way of saying, with poetry, the magnificence of this universe. And this new story, he said, a new way also sees us as part of this world, not as conquerors or having dominion over it, which is what Genesis tells us, nor as someone having dominion over us, as if we were puppets in some cosmic entertainment. We need a story that creates awe and reverence and meaning, and as a good creation story really should. So Dowd and Barlow borrowed from Swimme and others to create a new story, and they go now from church to church evangelizing. They call it the Great Story. The Great Story is the story of our universe. It's the story of evolution. And unlike intelligent design, it finds meaning in the universe by making science the basis of its religious worldview, rather than molding science to fit the religious worldview. In the Great Story, science is theology. It is our newest revelation. It's our modern scripture. Father Thomas Berry, who's a friend, he and Swimme actually work on a lot of this new story. He said this, he said, it's all a question of story. We are in trouble just now because we do not have a good story. We are in between stories. The old story, the account of how the world came to be and how we fit into it, is no longer effective. Our traditional story of the universe sustained us for a long period of time. It shaped our emotional attitudes, provided us with life purposes, and energized action. We need something that will supply in our times all of that, what was formerly supplied by our traditional religious story. If we are to achieve this purpose, we must begin where everything begins in human affairs, with the basic story, our narrative of how things came to be, how they came to be as they are, and how the future can be given some satisfying direction. I'll tell you just one little chapter of this story. Another great storyteller is Kenley Christopherson. He's a teacher of science and a storyteller, and he's also a musician, and he wrote the song that you heard our wonderful choir sing today. And he wrote this. He starts out very scientifically. Listen to this, though, but it's so great. He says this, most stars are made of 3 of the lightest elements in the universe, hydrogen, helium, and lithium. And upon their death, some smaller stars simply burn out and fade away. But the elder and more massive stars do something entirely different. These cosmic titans cave into their core, creating enormous heat, light, and energy, not seen since the Big Bang almost 14 billion years ago. But as these stars collapse, The new heat and density enables their lighter elements to be forged into larger, heavier, and stronger ones like nitrogen, carbon, oxygen, iron, and so forth. This process is called nuclear fusion, and in short, it fills the universe with a veritable something rather than nothing. As this fertile star gives way, it gets heavier and denser until it compresses to a point where it can't be compressed no further, and it's brimming with energy. Unable to sustain that form, it explodes through space and seeds the universe with heavy elements. These elements go on to attract one another through space and gravity to form asteroids, planetoids, and sometimes planets. Earth is one of those planets. From the calcium in our bones to the cobalt in our mountains, all things are connected through a common solar origin. The stellar nursery in the night sky reminds us that all stars, all flowers, all mountains, and all life are just threads in a cosmic tapestry. Each thread is important in itself, but when woven together, the picture is not only more clear, but also more beautiful. And isn't that just amazing? That is just one story in the great story. The great story is one full of meaning, full of awe and reverence for the vastness of creation, this amazing universe, and how we humans came into being. It doesn't require you to give up a belief in God, but it also doesn't require that you have one. In fact, Darwin actually saw this. People don't realize this sometimes. Darwin said this. He said, "There is grandeur in this view of life with its several powers. Having been originally breathed into a new form or into one, and that whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms most beautiful and most wonderful have been and are being evolved." David Bumbaugh, who's one of our Unitarian Universalist professors out of Meadville, Lombard, he's a humanist. He says this, is we have manned the ramparts of reason, and we are prepared to defend the citadel of the mind, but in the process we have lost the ability to speak of that which is sacred, holy, of ultimate importance to us. Humanism gave us a doctrine of incarnation which suggests not that the holy became human in one place at one time to convey a special message to a single chosen people, but that the universe itself is continually incarnating itself in microbes and maples and hummingbirds and human beings, constantly inviting us to tease out the revelation contained in stars and atoms and every living thing. So we need to sort of create new language, or maybe reframe old language to help create this new story. Like Dowd, he decided to create a new word called creatheist. Depending on how you read it, creatheist or creatheist, everybody belongs, right? I love that. And another example, what if we reframed and understood the word God differently? Stuart Kauffman is a scientist, and he suggests that we rename God not as the generator of the universe, but as the creativity in the natural universe itself. This idea of God so worthy of awe and gratitude and respect that it is a God enough for many of us. God, a fully natural God, is the very creativity of the universe. But what do you do with all this? This is part of what Michael Dowd and Barlow do. They're inviting us to ask, how do we understand our place in this universe? Barlow wrote this. She said, according to the great story, this is what we are. A force that is polluting the planet and causing mass extinction, but at the same time is a unique and precious expression of Earth. We are Earth's meaning makers, painters, self-discoverers, storytellers, and bards. We are Earth's deep memory. If we can embrace this as our unique ecological role, if we can learn and celebrate our great story, if we can truly see ourselves as actual cells of a larger body, Earth, then caring for the environment will feel as urgent and as natural as caring for ourselves. And you know what all of them are really talking about is something called process theology. Process theology says that God is not some omnipotent, omniscient being sitting up there remotely in the heavens looking down. I see you. But rather, God is a creative force that is embodied by all of creation, constantly growing and becoming, that God is evolving. And is within each of us, it's that urge to create, to become, to grow. That in a sense, we are the universe trying to figure itself out. So we need this new story. And we've got this beautiful one. If we choose to look up at the night sky, to look down at the grains of sand, if we choose to see it. And we need to see our role in this evolution, because evolution is speeding up. It used to take hundreds of thousands of years for evolution to occur, but with our technological advances, we are an evolutionary force, creating extinctions and new strains of animals and plants. We have become ourselves agents of evolution. So what do we do with that power? Do we destroy this earth? Or do we evolve with it, recognizing that we are part of it? Swim said this. He said, "You will have to embrace your creative potential. The universe has unfolded to this point. It has poured into you the creative powers necessary for its further development. For the unfolding of the universe, your creativity is as essential as the creativity inherent in the fireball." Because here's the thing about evolution that we do know, since we are that first generation to know this. It will go on with or without us. There have been mass extinctions throughout history. For the first time in history, we are aware of this. For the first time in history, we have the ability to do something about it. And it will take all of the creativity we have, all of the creativity that's been poured into us since the Big Bang, for us to survive it. A great story is one that tells us something about ourselves, about who we are and where we come from. We now have a grand and beautiful new story that tells us we are star, we are sand, we are stone, we are bone. We are one with the universe. So next, when you look up into that night sky, do you see your story? And how will you tell it? Blessed be, Shalom, and Amen.
Please stand as you're comfortable. We're going to sing Harry Belafonte's song, "Turn the World Around."